Ghost with Cats, Chapter 32, Old Friends. Dr. Dale Bence watched Dr. Winters-Dove climb into the classic Bentley with the elderly writer and his retired JAG lawyer. She had influential friends, but he would have her in his custody again in 24 hours. General Paul Fenton walked back into his office and sat down behind his desk. "Get out from behind my desk, Dale," he snarled in a deep Georgia accent. Bence was surprised because Paul had never taken such a tone with him. "So, are you going to tell me how much bigger this is than Pandora, or am I going to have some of my analysts give you a colonoscopy?" Paul asked in an irritated tone. "Look, Paul, I told you there are aspects of my research that I can't talk about," Bence reminded smoothly. "Really? How is killing and kidnapping part of your research? Colonel and Dr. Winters-Dove, original Pandora team, are all dead, just like Annie said. Then there's the whole alien invasion thing. I do not like to be made a fool of. We are facing multiple civil lawsuits because of your actions in Colorado and Texas, and a possible extraterrestrial threat to national and global security that we have no ability to deal with or overcome. I'm giving you this one opportunity to tell me the truth, Dale," the general offered sincerely. "Look, Paul, we've known each other for almost 10 years. I know you have a history with the Doves and feel responsible for what happened to them and their daughter. Yes, she was a brave girl then, but now she is a damaged, paranoid woman who admitted to both of us she wasn't above killing some of my security men who were only sent to conduct her safely to our research facility. Don't worry, no one is going to harm her. We need alternative energy resources for the future and to protect ourselves, and that means her parents' research. There were no aliens, it was industrial spies who played on her delusions to escape. There is no global security threat. Dr. Dove obviously believes too much of the fiction she writes," he said in a placating tone. Paul's eyes narrowed. He was born in the South in the 1960s. He worked his way up through the military ranks since he lied to get in when he was 17. He had spent the last 20 years in Washington, and he knew when someone was trying to sell him snake oil. "Then you'll leave her out of Pandora and fix it yourself?" Paul asked. "Yes, of course. If there isn't anything else, I need to deal with a few things in our Southern District office. My assistant quit and left quite a mess." Bence tried to excuse himself. Of course. Paul already knew it was Ben's yacht that had exploded in the Gulf of Mexico, even if the Coast Guard didn't. "One more thing, Dale. Annie said I should ask you about Collie." Ben's eyes narrowed dangerously. He slammed the door behind him, and Paul knew Annie was right. This was bigger than Pandora. His assistant came in with a pile of folders after Bence left. An hour later, after flipping through the files on his desk, the general turned his chair, looking up at the winter sky. He picked up his phone and dialed the head of another agency. It was time to call in a favor from someone who specialized in dealing with save-the-world scenarios. "Derek, Paul here. You're still friends with that crazy old coot that turns all your adventures into novels?" "Pops? Yeah, he's actually in D.C. picking up a restored car. Do you need to talk to him?" "No, but will you see him?" "Actually, I'm flying Pop's new classic back to Colorado tomorrow." "You are? Good. Very good." Paul opened his desk drawer and opened a small photo album. He flipped through the pages to the picture of the owner of the voice on the phone, sitting with him and Annie's father. Well, he just picked up a remarkably interesting young lady from my office today, the daughter of an old friend. Our dinner tonight might have to wait. Can you get them back to Colorado today? Is Pop's new friend in trouble? Derek sounded worried. Call Pops, tell him you need to go today because of Bence. Have her tell you about Rabbit Hole and Project Pandora. It sounds like some of the crazy stuff you and your people get into. And can you give her a message for me? Tell her I'm sorry I ever doubted her. There was silence for a moment. Then the director of the Maritime Ocean and Atmospheric Research Association asked, I'll give her the message. What's going on, Paul? I just need to do some house cleaning before I retire. I owe you. Thanks. Bye, Derek. He hung up the phone before the other man could respond. Paul pushed the buzzer for his assistant. Get my top 5 analysts in here right now, and agent surveilling Dale Bence and Omni-Energy Research Incorporated. We have a colonoscopy to start. The Bentley parked under a luxury apartment building off the Beltway. Winston lived on the 5th floor. Gregory, Winston's cat, immediately rubbed all over Annie. Winston's butler, Lawrence, served an excellent lunch as Annie told them about how she met the Eloh and how they got on the train. Pops admitted that Winston was one of 15 people who he and Sharon's Uncle Isaac had looking for Annie. Winston was watching the bus terminal, and when the shooting started, he saw them flee. Guessing where she would go, he had only beaten them to the train yard by 10 minutes. He praised her evasion, skills, caution, and resourcefulness. Winston said it was a relief to know that her companion, Matt, was home in Seattle and safe. She told them about getting to Kachara and how she had been distracted by running into an old student working as a clerk and stupidly used her own credit card. It was only the good fortune that her former student called to warn them, which allowed them to escape to the New Moon Springs retreat belonging to the rabbis. Pops's phone chimed. He excused himself and waited for her to continue, but returned quickly. I'm sorry, Winston, but we have to go. It seems Mr. Bence is having a fit and wants our dear Annie back. We're going to see Derek and Junior, and they're going to fly us back to Colorado this afternoon instead of tomorrow. Winston frowned and rose. Lawrence, we have work to do. Annie needs to be duplicated and disguised. Annie just sat there holding Gregory, wondering if this was going to be the rest of her life, running and hiding. What about your Bentley? She asked. She hated to leave the beautiful car behind. We'll take it with us. Derek collects planes the way I collect cars. Come, dear, let them transform you. Then we have an hour drive. We need to get out ahead of the traffic and that villain, Pops schemed. I'm sorry to be so much trouble, she murmured, while Lawrence was on the phone. Anyone who can read my books from my mind as well as you do, save the world, face adversity, and still be as kind as you are, is worth it. And don't forget someone who likes cats, Winston smiled. Lawrence, you have 20 minutes to make Annie a new woman. Annie realized Lawrence was much more than a butler, because in 18 minutes she looked completely different. The doe-eyed, mousy brunette was replaced with a perky redhead with blue eyes. Her bulky sweater and loose jeans were replaced with a fitted, wrapped sweater, slim jeans tucked into boots, and a leather coat belted around her slim figure. From the couture shop downstairs, she looked like she was a 20-something again, instead of a frumpy writer buried under protective layers of clothes. She gaped at the mirror. All you need is the right cut and color and a few makeup accents, and voila, a new person, Lawrence declared in an unidentifiable accent. He smiled slightly. Thank you, she whispered. Winston clapped, but Pops chuckled. Lawrence, I'm going to get the reputation of being one of those old men who collects fancy cars and beautiful girls, Pops declared. Annie blushed again and he laughed. I must ask, Annie, where did you get your wonderful inkwork? Lawrence inquired. I have never seen that style of tattoo. It is quite beautiful and unique. That's a long story, Annie started. She didn't know if she wanted to tell anyone about Tall's ink and what it meant. One we don't have time for, Pops interrupted. Sorry, old man, perhaps another time. There was a knock at the door. Lawrence led a young woman who was the same height as Annie and who had dark hair. Lawrence handed her Annie's clothes, and in moments Annie's doppelganger stood by the door. Annie was amazed at how much the stranger looked like her, with her clothes and just a little makeup. Winston drove out of the covered garage with the faux Annie in the front seat of his Aston Martin convertible. Pops pulled out apparently alone and went the other way. From the fifth floor, Lawrence called to report an SUV with government plates was following Winston and Annie's doppelganger, but no one was following Pops. Annie sat up as they headed to the outskirts of town toward a private airfield. She kept touching her hair and fidgeting with her clothes. She hadn't cared about those things since she was 23. I feel like I'm missing something, she wondered aloud. Who are we going to meet again? Pops reassured her. You'll be surprised, but you won't be, I promise. Mysterious. The DC sunshine glowed off the polish of the Bentley as they sped toward their destination. There was a vintage plane sitting next to a hangar. The building had obviously been converted to a home. Annie thought she was going to have a heart attack. It was one of her father's favorite aircraft, affectionately called the flying boxcar. She turned to Pops. Is that for real? She demanded excitedly. Pops laughed at her reaction. I think that is our ride. Derek loves vintage planes. He's a retired Navy pilot and runs a little ocean research group now. Ah, there he is, with his son. His stories are as interesting as yours, my dear. They pulled up and got out. Then Pops made the introductions. This is Derek Bigelow, director of the Maritime, Oceanic, and Atmospheric Research Association, and his son, Derek Jr. This is Annie Dove. She'll be flying with us. Hello. She felt shy and tried to be polite, but she didn't suffer her anxiety as badly as she had for years. Very nice to meet you, Annie. Derek was genuinely nice and somehow familiar. Call me DJ, Derek's son. DJ couldn't take his eyes off her, but Annie couldn't take her eyes off the plane. Do you like my dad's plane, Annie? DJ asked. How many people have a Fairchild C-119G with the Connie blades? It's amazing. She walked around the plane. I thought all of these were in museums. Derek chuckled. Wow, Pops, you found a young woman who knows her aircraft. I'm impressed. He waved Pops forward as the writer parked his car in the back of the plane. She is one of a kind, Pops agreed through the open window as he set the parking brake. Annie, tell them how you know about this plane. Daddy was an Air Force colonel. This was his favorite plane, the famous flying boxcar. He and a Navy pilot buddy had a bet as to who would get one first after they retired. Annie begged happily, "Can I go up to the cockpit, please?" "Sure, sweetie," Derek said, but a frown furrowed his brow as soon as her back was turned. DJ looked at his father oddly as he handed him a strap for the tires. "Problem, Dad?" "Pops, you said her last name was Dove. Was Annie's father named James?" he inquired. "Yes, and I know he and her mom were murdered just a few years after he retired from the Air Force. Did you know him?" the old writer asked. "James Dove and Basha Winters-Dove," Derek breathed out slowly. "We were friends. James was a good officer and a better man. His wife was a brilliant scientist and one of the nicest ladies you could ever want to meet. She spent every summer fostering kids who were victims of violence in Israel," Derek explained. "They sound like good people," DJ observed. "They were killed for Basha's research. Annie stopped the disaster that almost followed," Pops added. "They were good people. Wait." Light green eyes narrowed suspiciously. "Annie is not Alice from the Rabbit Hole report?" The old writer nodded sadly. "Oh, that poor girl. I wondered why Paul was so insistent that I meet her," Derek breathed out. DJ looked at them, confused, but before he could ask, "Pops, Bence is here!" Annie shouted, scrambling back from the cockpit. She pointed past them.